How to teach effective selling, persuading, and negotiating skills. In this episode, we are continuing to teach one of the 12 principles that will help you prepare your children for a brighter future. Get ready. This is extremely powerful and a must teach to those you care about. So my name's Doug Andrew, and I've been a financial strategist for more than 48 years, but helping people optimize their financial assets isn't my only focus. I have met with thousands of extremely successful people, many of them multimillionaires, some billionaires. And all too often, when they were raising their children, and I would ask them about how they established this empire and built this business, they would tell me their story about how they learned the value of hard work. Their parents grew up after the Great Depression and so forth. And many times they'd say, man, my kids will never have to work as hard as I did. But about 20 or 30 years later, they would often come in and I could tell they weren't very happy or content. And I'd say, what's up? Many times they would say, Doug, I don't know what's wrong with our children. They don't even know how to work. And I would say, well, maybe you stole that from them. Maybe in your effort to not have them go through the struggles that made you who you are, you actually stole from them the opportunity to struggle sometimes in life and get strong from overcoming adversity. So in this series, we are talking about principles that our colleges and universities are not effectively teaching. Many of these wealthy clients sent their children to colleges and universities, and they would graduate. One had a son that had 2 PhDs, another with an MBA. They both moved back home. They couldn't find a job. We tested them on their understanding of 12 key principles. And guess what? They failed miserably. We took about 6 months and trained them on these, and they had job offers lined up. Oh my heavens, what are the colleges and universities not effectively teaching? Well, there are 12 principles. So as we go through these, this is usually on a handout where the front page has 6 and the back has 6. And now we are going to be addressing this particular one, number 9 out of 12. I would recommend, if you have not watched the first 8, that you do so in this series on how to prepare your children for the future. But we're going to dive into this one, and this is actually selling, persuading, and negotiating skills. Amazing how many times I've had job applicants right out of college come into my firm, and I tell them to sell me on their skills. Sell me on yourself. And they can't even sell themselves. I go, what's up with this? How are you ever going to be an asset to a business if you can't even sell yourself to an employer, and why we should hire you? Okay. So these are some very simple, but apparently not very well taught skills in our colleges and universities. So as we go through this, I want to give you a few stories as backgrounds to the importance behind what I'm about to share with you. I could talk for 2 hours on it, but in this episode, I just want to give you a few nuggets. Now, years ago, there was a survey done of 1,000 surgeons in America. And they found out of 1,000 surgeons that those doctors, those surgeons who invested at least 16 minutes or more being sincerely interested in their patients, okay, the chance of being sued for malpractice or a mistake they make was next to nil. But every minute less than 16 minutes that they were not sincerely interested in their patients, the chance of being sued went up 10%. Now, back then, the HMOs, health maintenance organizations, were telling the doctors, listen, you can't get personal with people. This is a business. You've got to move one bed to the next bed. Just get to the point. You cannot get personal. And they couldn't figure out why they were being sued so much. Now, if you don't understand this, people tend to deal below the line, is what we call it, blaming, justifying, operating in shame. They tend to sue people they don't have relationships with. They sue the doctor, the surgeon, they sue the financial advisor, the CPA. They want to blame them because it's no skin off their nose. They don't have a relationship with them. But if they have a relationship, it's next to impossible for them to muster up enough courage to sue somebody. Now, they discovered that with that survey. Now, I said the surgeons who invested 16 minutes or more being sincerely interested. So I've used the word sincere 2 or 3 times in the last couple of minutes. Where does it come from? Before I explain the meaning of sincere, I want to ask you a question. Are you ready? Who had a significant impact in your life by the time you were age 15? Think about it. Who had a significant impact? For me, it was a scoutmaster, my brother, my dad, a bishop in our church congregation. Whoever it was for you, whoever came to mind, let me ask you next. Did they have a significant impact in your life by that age because they were interesting to you, or because they were interested in you? How many agree it's this one? They were interested in you. You've heard the adage, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Yeah, being sincerely interested. So I'm going to give you the definition of sincere and tell you a little story. But before I do, if this is resonating with you, let me tell you what you can do. I would recommend that if you can think of somebody that ought to be watching this message, that you share. You click like, post a comment, but most importantly, subscribe. It's free. This is the 3-Dimensional Wealth channel, and I post an in-depth concept and answer to a question almost on a daily basis. So when you subscribe, you click the little bell, and that notifies you every time I do post a new episode. I don't want you to miss out. But also, at the end of this episode, in most episodes, there's usually a gift that I would love to give you, and I want to give you a copy of my most recent best-selling book that explains these concepts. So stay with me till the end. Let me share with you this little explanation or story. In ancient Greece, Italy, that area of the world, the potters who would make pottery out of clay would form them and then put them in a kiln, an oven. And when they would emerge from the oven, many of these pieces of pottery would have cracks or imperfections like this, okay? Now, in the pottery profession anciently, they learned how to melt candle wax and drip it into the cracks. And they would smooth it over and paint it, and it would still be functional. It would still hold water, okay? But if it ever toppled over, where would it break? In the weak spot, okay? Where there was wax filler. Because it wasn't genuine, it wasn't solid there. Even though it was covered up, there was a weak spot that maybe wasn't apparent. And so this is actually, from what I understand, the term crackpot comes from. A crackpot is somebody who acts like they have their act together, that they really walk the talk, but they don't. And the first little straw in the windstorm, and they fall apart. And everybody goes, golly, I thought that they had their act together. They didn't really walk their talk. That's a crackpot. Now, in the pottery profession, if you had a piece of pottery that did not have any wax filler, okay, it was genuine. If you thought you were getting a solid piece of pottery that was strong, it was the real deal, the real McCoy. The pottery profession said they could stamp that with the word sincere. That's Italian for sincere. What does sincere mean? It means literally without wax. Sincere means without phony wax filler. So let me just say this. If you haven't discovered this, your kids and grandkids can tell whether you're sincere or not. You cannot walk behind the shed and catch your two sons smoking behind the shed and lose it and go, "What are you thinking? Don't you know that's bad for you? Hold on." And then you stuff out your own cigarette. "What are you thinking? That's bad for you." Because what you're doing speaks louder than the words. Or how many parents will go into their children that are screaming and hollering and go, "Children, stop screaming." You just screamed, okay? They get it. And so you want to be sincere. They can tell whether or not you're truly sincere or you're faking it, okay? Isn't it amazing how children have little BS meters? And as soon as you start feeding BS, their little meters go, "Oh, here we go again," because maybe you're not really walking the talk. You must be sincere. And when you do that, you'll be able to teach them how to be more effective selling themselves with sincerity, to be able to persuade with sincerity, and also be able to negotiate a win-win with sincerity, instead of presenting something and having the customer go, okay, as you put the cheese out there, and the customer's going, "Where's the whiskers? Where's the whiskers? You're offering me some cheese," but they don't trust you because they can sense you're not sincere. You don't even own the product yourself. Does that make sense? How can you sell something that you're not sold on yourself? You're not sincere. Now, this is just the tip of the iceberg. But if you want to learn more, I would recommend you study this book, Entitlement, Abolition. This teaches all 12 principles that I'm talking about to prepare your children for a brighter future. Here's how you can claim your free copy. Go to entitlementabolitionbook.com or click on the link below. You contribute a nominal amount towards the shipping and handling. It'll show you there your options. And I'll fire out a free copy to you. It's 200 pages, but there's also options there if you like to listen and learn or watch and learn. There's even an 18-hour masterclass on video if you want to do a deep dive, and it has been a game changer for many, many people and their families. Click on the other episodes that address these 12 principles on this very channel and be sure and subscribe. And here is to your brighter future.